We trained for 6 months to rescue prisoners who weren't there. That's the short version of Sun Tae. The long version is more complicated, more painful. But I'll tell you the whole thing, because somebody should know what we did, what we tried to do, what it cost us even though the mission failed. Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison, Army Ranger, Special Forces, 26 years old, from Montana. I'd done 2 tours in Vietnam by 1970, knew the jungle, knew the enemy, knew how to fight. When they asked for volunteers for a classified mission, I raised my hand without hesitation. They assembled us at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, 56 of us, Rangers, Special Forces, the best soldiers the Army had. They told us we were training for something important, something that could change the war, something that could bring Americans home. We trained for months, May through November 1970, built a full-scale mock-up of our objective, practiced the raid over and over, day runs, night runs with live ammunition. We knew every inch of that compound, could navigate it blindfolded, knew our roles, our timings, our backup plans. But they didn't tell us what the objective was, not at first. Just that we were raiding a target in North Vietnam, that timing was critical, that lives depended on us getting it perfect. In October, they finally told us. We were going to rescue American POWs from a camp called Sun Tae, 23 miles west of Hanoi, deep in North Vietnam, in the heart of enemy territory. Intelligence said there were 61 prisoners there, pilots shot down, soldiers captured, men who'd been in hell for years. We were going to get them out. The mission was called Operation Ivory Coast. It would be the deepest raid into North Vietnam of the entire war. Helicopters flying hundreds of miles into enemy airspace, landing right in the middle of a POW camp, fighting our way in, grabbing the prisoners and getting out before the entire North Vietnamese army could respond. It was audacious. It was dangerous. It was probably suicide. We didn't care. Those were our boys in that camp, our brothers, and we were going to bring them home. November 21st, 1970, we loaded onto helicopters at a Thai air base. Final briefing, final checks. Everyone was quiet, focused, ready. Remember, Colonel Simons told us, we're going to the best guarded prisoner camp in North Vietnam. This is it. Make it count. We lifted off at 23:18 hours, flew into the night, into North Vietnam, into history, and into the biggest disappointment of my life. The flight took about an hour and a half. 5 helicopters, 3 HH-3s and 2 HH-53s. We were crammed in tight, full combat gear, enough ammunition to fight through the entire North Vietnamese army if we had to. I was in Blue Boy, one of the assault helicopters. Our job was to land in the compound, secure the cell blocks, extract the prisoners. Simple on paper. Suicide in practice. We flew low. I mean low. Treetop level. Sometimes lower, trying to stay under their radar, avoid detection as long as possible. Through my window I could see the jungle rushing past, moonlight reflecting off rivers, the occasional light from a village. We were going into North Vietnam, not the DMZ, not the border regions, North Vietnam proper. Hanoi was 23 miles away. If something went wrong, if we got shot down, we weren't making it home. At 02:18 hours, we crossed the Red River. We were in Sun Tae's airspace now, minutes from the objective. I checked my rifle, checked my grenades, looked at the other Rangers. Everyone was ready. Greenleaf, the lead helicopter, was supposed to crash land deliberately in the compound, controlled crash to deliver the assault team right to the prison. The rest of us would land outside and fight our way in. I heard it over the radio. Apple 1. This is Greenleaf. We're going in. Then I heard the crash. The sound of a helicopter slamming into the ground on purpose. Controlled chaos. Our helicopter came in right behind them. Landed hard just outside the compound walls. The ramp dropped and we poured out, rifles up, scanning for targets. The compound was exactly where Intel said it would be. The walls were right. The guard towers were right. Everything matched our mock-up. We blew the main gate with explosives, rushed in, started clearing buildings, expected to find guards, expected resistance. We got it. Guards were scrambling, trying to respond to the assault. We cut them down. Clean shots, suppressed weapons, professional. This was what we'd trained for. This was what we were good at. "Cell blocks," someone shouted. "Clear the cell blocks." We rushed to the prison buildings, kicked in doors, searched rooms, called out for Americans, for POWs, for anyone. Empty. The first cell block was empty. No prisoners, no signs of prisoners, just empty cells. "Check the next one," an officer was shouting. "They've got to be here somewhere." We cleared the second cell block. Empty. Third cell block, empty. The compound was deserted. No prisoners, no signs that prisoners had been there recently. The camp was abandoned. We'd flown into the heart of North Vietnam, assaulted a heavily guarded compound, engaged enemy forces, executed a perfect raid on a target that had been perfectly recreated back in Florida. And there was nobody there. "Search everywhere." Colonel Simons was on the radio. "Check every building. They have to be here." But they weren't. The intelligence had been wrong. The prisoners had been moved. Weeks ago, maybe months. The camp was empty. We'd risked everything to rescue men who weren't there. The horror wasn't the combat. The combat went perfectly. We owned that compound. Killed every guard who resisted, secured every building, executed the raid exactly as planned. The horror was the realization, the slow, crushing understanding that this was all for nothing. We kept searching, tearing through every building, every room, looking for any sign of the prisoners. Maybe they were hidden. Maybe intel had the wrong building. Maybe they were in a different part of the compound. But we knew. Deep down, we knew. The camp was empty. Had been empty for a while. You could tell. Dust on the floors. No personal items. No signs of recent habitation. One of the guys found a sign in Vietnamese. We had a translator with us. "What's it say?" The translator looked at it. His face went pale. "It says this camp was closed in July. Prisoners were relocated due to flooding. July. 4 months ago. The prisoners had been moved 4 months ago and nobody told us. Either intelligence didn't know or the information didn't reach us in time. Either way, we were here, in North Vietnam, raiding an empty camp. "Exfil now," the order came through. "Everyone to the helicopters. We're leaving." We ran back to the LZ. The whole operation had taken maybe 25 minutes. 25 minutes from landing to discovering the camp was empty to starting extraction. That's when things got worse. The North Vietnamese were responding. We could hear sirens, see lights from vehicles approaching. We'd kicked the hornet's nest, and now the hornets were coming. One of our helicopters had been damaged in the assault. The crew chief was frantically working to get it airborne. We laid down covering fire, keeping the approaching enemy forces at bay. Small arms fire from the tree line. A few NVA soldiers had made it to the perimeter. We engaged them, dropping them before they could get closer. But more were coming. We could hear them. Trucks, probably troops, maybe armor. "We need to go now," someone was shouting. The damaged helicopter lifted off, barely, trailing smoke. The rest of us piled into the other birds, crammed in tight, more men than we'd trained with, but everyone had to get out. We lifted off just as the first North Vietnamese reinforcements arrived. Could see them through the helicopter door, soldiers running toward the compound, shooting at us. Tracers arcing up into the night sky. Our door gunners returned fire. Heavy machine gun fire raking the ground below. We climbed, gained altitude, turned south. And then the weird part. The part that still doesn't make sense. As we flew out, we passed over another compound. Looked similar to Son Tay. The gunners opened up on it, thinking it was a secondary target. Later we found out it was actually a Chinese installation. We'd accidentally shot up a Chinese position on our way out. International incident waiting to happen. But in the moment, we didn't care. We were getting out, getting back to Thailand, getting home. The flight back was silent. Nobody talked. Nobody celebrated. We'd executed a perfect raid, textbook operation. Everything had gone according to plan, except the one thing that mattered. The prisoners weren't there. We'd trained for 6 months. 56 of the best soldiers America had. Billions of dollars in planning, equipment, training. We'd risked our lives flying deep into North Vietnam. And we'd rescued exactly 0 prisoners. When we landed back at the Thai base, people were waiting to congratulate us. The operation had been a success, they said. Perfect execution, no casualties on our side. But I didn't feel successful. I felt like we'd failed. The mission was to rescue POWs. We didn't rescue anyone. The debriefing took hours. They wanted to know everything, every detail. What we saw, what we found, what happened. We told them. Empty camp. No prisoners. Signs they'd been moved months ago. Perfect raid on an empty target. The brass tried to spin it as a success. The operation itself was flawless, they said. Perfect execution. Proved we could strike deep into North Vietnam. Sent a message to Hanoi. Boosted morale. Boosted morale. That was rich. My morale wasn't boosted. I'd spent 6 months training to rescue POWs who weren't even there. They classified the whole thing immediately. Top secret. We weren't allowed to talk about it. Not to the press, not to other soldiers, not even to our families. Operation Ivory Coast never happened, as far as the public was concerned. But word leaked out eventually, always does. The press got hold of it. Daring raid to rescue POWs. Heroes strike deep into North Vietnam. The headlines made it sound glorious. They didn't mention that we rescued 0 prisoners, that the intelligence was wrong, that we'd risked everything for nothing. The worst part came later. We learned that the prisoners from Son Tay had been moved to other camps closer to Hanoi, camps we couldn't reach, camps where security was tightened because of our raid. Our raid made things worse for them. Made their captivity harder. Made rescue less likely. We'd tried to save them and ended up making their situation worse. I went back to regular duty after Son Tay, back to the war, back to the jungle. But it felt different now. Everything felt pointless. If we couldn't even rescue our own prisoners, if we could plan for 6 months, train with the best men, execute perfectly, and still fail, then what was the point of any of it? I finished my tour in early 1971, came home with a chest full of medals, commendations from officers, classified citations I couldn't tell anyone about. The Army wanted me to re-enlist. Special Forces needed experienced NCOS. I said no. I was done. Done with missions that failed before they started. Done with wars we couldn't win. Done with all of it. The POWs from Son Tay eventually came home after the Paris Peace Accords in 1973. They'd spent years in captivity, years of torture, starvation, isolation. Some of them had been in Hanoi Hilton, where conditions were brutal. When they came home, some reporters asked them about Son Tay, about the raid that tried to rescue them. They said it gave them hope, knowing that we'd tried, knowing that America hadn't forgotten them. Some of them said that hope kept them alive through the darkest times. I wanted to feel good about that, wanted to believe that our failed mission at least accomplished something. But all I could think about was that empty compound, those empty cells, the prisoners we trained for 6 months to rescue but never found. I broke when I met one of them. It was 1973. The POWs had just come home. Big celebration, parades, the whole country welcoming them back. I was in Washington, D.C., working a civilian job, trying to live a normal life. One of the Son Tay prisoners, a guy named Major Wesley, was doing interviews, talking about his captivity, his experiences. And he mentioned the raid, mentioned how they'd heard about it even after they'd been moved. how it gave them hope. I waited after one of his talks, introduced myself, told him I was part of the Sun Tae raid. His face lit up. He grabbed my hand. "You guys were heroes," he said. "You tried. That's what mattered. You tried to get us out." I couldn't accept that. "We failed. You weren't there. We rescued nobody." "You didn't fail," he said. "The intel failed. The timing failed. But you did your job. You risked everything to save us. Do you know what that meant to us? Knowing that men were willing to die trying to rescue us?" I wanted to believe him, wanted to feel like the mission meant something, but all I felt was the weight of that failure. "We trained for 6 months, I told him. 6 months to execute a perfect raid, and it didn't matter. You weren't there. We couldn't save you." He looked at me for a long moment. "You can't save everyone, Sergeant. Sometimes just trying is enough." But it wasn't enough. Not for me. I'd spent 6 months preparing to be a hero, to rescue prisoners, to do something that mattered. And when the moment came when we executed perfectly, it was all meaningless because the intelligence was wrong. That's what broke me, not the raid itself. The realization that you can do everything right and still fail. That planning, training, courage, skill, none of it matters if the fundamental mission is based on bad information. I started having nightmares, not about combat, about the empty compound, walking through those empty cells, searching for prisoners who weren't there, finding nothing, always nothing. I'd wake up feeling like I'd failed them all over again, failed the prisoners, failed my team, failed the mission. A VA psychiatrist told me I had survivor's guilt mixed with mission guilt, that I was processing the trauma of a failed rescue attempt, that I needed to accept that I did my best. But my best wasn't good enough. That's what I couldn't get past. We were the best soldiers America had. We planned perfectly, trained perfectly, executed perfectly, and we still failed. If perfection isn't enough, then what is? I stopped talking about Sun Tae, stopped thinking about it when I could, tried to move on with life, but it was always there, that empty compound, those empty cells, the mission that proved that trying isn't always enough. It's been a few months since the last POWS came home, a few months since I met Major Wesley and heard him call us heroes. I still don't feel like a hero. The military did a formal assessment of Sun Tae, concluded that the operation was a tactical success but a strategic failure, perfect execution, wrong target. They used it as a case study in intelligence gathering, in mission planning, in the importance of real-time information. Cold comfort for those of us who were there, who flew into North Vietnam expecting to rescue prisoners and found nothing. But something strange has happened over the past few months. Other Sun Tae raiders have been reaching out, calling, writing letters, wanting to talk about it. Not to journalists or historians, to each other. We're trying to process what we did, what it meant, whether it mattered. Some guys have made peace with it. They say we sent a message, proved that America wouldn't abandon its prisoners, showed the North Vietnamese that nowhere was safe, that kind of thing. Others are like me, still struggling with the failure, still seeing those empty cells, still carrying the weight of a mission that accomplished nothing. One thing we all agree on: the POWs themselves don't see it as a failure. The ones from Sun Tae, and even ones from other camps, they tell us the raid mattered, gave them hope, proved they weren't forgotten. I'm trying to accept that, trying to believe that a failed rescue attempt still has value, that the attempt itself is meaningful even when it doesn't succeed. It's hard. I'm a soldier. Soldiers are judged by results. We completed the objective or we didn't. We won the battle or we lost. There's no credit for trying in combat. But maybe this is different. Maybe some missions matter even when they fail. Maybe knowing someone tried to save you is worth something, even if they didn't succeed. I think about the planning. 6 months of training, hundreds of hours perfecting our tactics, every man memorizing every detail of that compound. We were ready for everything except the one thing that mattered, that the prisoners weren't there. Should we have had better intelligence? Yes. Should someone have confirmed the prisoners were still there before we launched? Absolutely. Those are valid criticisms, failures at higher levels that we paid for at ground level. But we did our part. Every single man on that raid did exactly what he was supposed to do. We executed perfectly. And sometimes, that's all you can do. I'm working on accepting that, working on letting go of the guilt, working on understanding that I can't control intelligence failures or strategic decisions. I can only control my own actions. And my actions on November 21st, 1970, were everything they should have been. The nightmares are getting less frequent. The empty cells don't haunt me as much. I'm starting to see Son Tay not as a failure, but as an attempt. A genuine, well-planned, courageously executed attempt to save Americans in captivity. We didn't save them, but we tried. And maybe, just maybe, that's worth something. The POWs are home now. All of them. They made it through hell and came back. Some of them because they held on to hope. Hope that America hadn't forgotten them. Hope that someone might come. We just came to the wrong place at the wrong time. But we came. We tried. And the prisoners knew that. Knew that America was willing to risk everything to bring them home. I'm 26 years old. My military career is over. My war is done. But Son Tay will always be with me. The mission that succeeded in every way except the one that mattered. We trained for 6 months to rescue prisoners who weren't there. But we trained. We tried. We cared enough to risk everything. And maybe, in the end, that has to be enough.